right, so today we have Mike Sanders. He is the Human Performance Coordinator at 7th Group. I'll let him go a little more details down the road. First, I want to let you know who's here today. We got me, Justin Schwenk. I'm the Human Performance Advisor for AFSOC at 58 South. I have Darius Dupree. He's a strength and conditioning coach for 58 South. I have Joseph Boyd. He is a tactical strength and conditioning coach within USASOC. I have Jacob Barra, who is a sports scientist with AFSOC. And we're all here to hear from what I deem one of the best in the biz, especially the tactical sector. So without further ado, Mike Sanders in 2.5 minutes.
All right, so I am Mike Sanders, and I started off my career at the University of Denver and training mainly hockey players, but of course have worked with just about every athlete you can imagine, from 145-pound figure skater, male figure skater that was one of the strongest and most well-developed people I've ever been around in my life, to MMA fighters, to whatever. I've worked with just about everybody. Sport has always been a way, or originally was a way for me to scratch the itch of understanding what the human being was capable of. And that's really the reason why I'm excited about what I do, is I have this burning desire to understand what humans' potential really actually is. And and at the time, that was the only way I could really express that. Of course, and then we started talking about moving these concepts and theories and processes into the tactical world. And man, that was something I was like, man, that is something I have to do. I got to get one of those jobs. So I thought, what better place to answer the questions that I have of what are human beings capable of doing? And man, that was it. That was what I wanted to do. And so I started interviewing and pushing for that. And so here we are. I ended up going to the Navy, working with SEAL teams in Virginia Beach at Dam Neck for 2 years, thinking I'd be there for the rest of my life. And then, of course, 7th Group here in Florida called to take over the program and design it. And didn't originally think I was going to do it. I really enjoyed being where I was, but decided that maybe this was the best thing for me to come here for me, my family and I. And looking back on it now, it has been absolutely the right thing to do. Not that it's just overall life and balance has been a lot better since we've been here. So anyway, that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Thanks, Coach. Really, first off, I think want to highlight with you that I've really noticed, that I've talked to other people, and when Justin Jones went down to visit you, he took pictures that you allowed him to see, but your facility is like the mecca of all the tactical facilities. It's really, really, really nice. It's got all the things. Essentially, they all have purposes. If I can kind of hear your thoughts and processes into that, why you were able to, first off, get a freaking hangar and build it to an awesome facility. But what did you put into your process of building that facility, and what was essential what was essential of what you put in there?
Well, so 7th Group was leaving. The timing was just unbelievable. Everything worked out very well. As my good buddy Mike Strock, who works up in at Little Creek, said, he said, "Man, I feel like the planets aligned for you when you came here." And I think he was right. The timing was just really awesome. So what ended up happening was 7th Group didn't have a home really. So they were moving to Eglin Air Force Base here in Florida. And so they had moved here a year before I got here. During that process, when they were developing this, Thor 3 was kind of the human performance idea was kind of coming along, but it wasn't obviously near as robust or really even understood exactly what it was going to be. But people, again, as I've said over the years, they knew they wanted it. They just didn't know what it was, which is not a whole lot different than it was when I started in collegiate athletics 20-some years ago. So anyway, so when we got there, they had an MWR facility that they had built, a military wellness and recreation facility they had built for the command. With that, it was a YMCA, really. I mean, that's what it looked like. It had climbing walls and had a really old concept for what a gym would look like in these, what we call the front two rooms. But in the back, they had a basketball, two basketball courts that was decked out with, the bleachers and the whole 9 yards. Well, what they were going to do is that I came in, and the XO at the time took me into the facility, and they had converted one of those basketball courts into a sort of makeshift gym, which is very common that we see, across the board in many places, including colleges still probably to this day. And so they made it into a makeshift gym. And I said, and he said, he was very proud, and he should have been, because it was awesome. And he says, so this is it. What do you think? I said, this is great. And it's just about the right size for what we need right now. However, I believe that this program is going to grow really big, and we're going to need this whole space. What's it going to look like for us to get this whole space? And he says, you're never going to get this whole space. Well, we did. And it's not because of anything I've done. It was because the special operators knew that this is what they needed in order to prepare for combat. And so we basically took it over. So we have turf, we have, the weightlifting equipment, we have all of our stuff in there. Plus we've got a few extra things that we try to tie in our mental performance coach and all those things onto the floor itself to bridge that gap between, physical training and the mental side of things as well. And there's a few other things we have done too. One of the other things I did was I was able to procure some money to build office space in our back. So we put office space in the back. We converted one of the areas for our PTs that's in the facility now. And now everybody is kind of localized in that area. And I also invited and asked our organizational psych to share an office space with us in the back. And his office space is right across the hallway from mine. Once again, trying to bridge that gap between what human performance looks like and to kind of live that concept of that holistic model.
Thanks, Coach. Coach Decree, you got a question for him, sir?
Yes, sir. Coach Sanders, I'd like to ask you, how have you seen the transition with this tactical side ever growing, and compare that to your time collegiately? Because, we have a lot of strength coaches out there that really don't understand that, we're still training the athlete. It may be just, their wins and losses are a lot different than the game, of course, but just the overall transition coming from the collegiate side and then seeing the growth within the tactical side. What has your experience been like?
Are you asking about the overall growth of where we've gone in the last few years? Is that what you mean?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So I can tell you that it doesn't seem like it, even for me, who's been around for a really long time, because you get caught. It's like watching your kids grow. Your kid, like I have a 12-year-old that I'm like, I looked at her yesterday and she was only 4. It's like, okay, what happened there? And then the next thing you know, and you forget that piece until you look back at pictures when she was 4. So the thing is I can tell you, for anybody that's coming into the tactical world and it might be feeling like, man, are we ever going to get there? Yes, we are. We have a long ways to go, no doubt about it, but we have come so far, it's absolutely ridiculous. So I can tell you a story real quick. When I actually came up from a Division II school, which in itself made my career a struggle to get started, but I started a Division II school, and I remember this feeling in my head. I'm like, okay, I want to be a strength conditioning coach. And I kept thinking, man, all these coaches here seem to think that they want a strength and conditioning coach. They just don't exactly know what one is. In other words, it was like, strength conditioning, that sounds pretty cool. Maybe we should put them into our process, right? Well, now we see what's going on with strength conditioning today, and it's completely different. Football is hiring, strength conditioning coaches right out of the gate because there's such a integral role on the team, and we know that now, but it took a long time for us to get there. The military is the same way. When I came in 10 years ago, I actually told myself, you're going to have to be patient because we're probably starting just where you were 10 years ago before, when I was in collegiate athletics getting started. And it's exactly where we're at. So we have definitely grown. And I mean, to tell you, like, seeing guys warm up, that's one of my biggest reminders, just simply watching guys warm up. I'm like, holy cow, no one was doing that 10 years ago. Soldiers weren't doing that because that's no fun. That's not how I get better. And that's not how I go out and whoop everybody's, tails here. I gotta do something heavy. And so we've definitely come a long ways in that. And then the other thing that you see is bigger militaries starting to see this idea of this performance side of things. And they're starting to kind of say, you know what, maybe we need to pay attention to this. We are getting there, but we still have a lot of work to do. And I will tell you this one last story. I don't know if it's a real quote or if it's not, if he actually said this, whether he said it or not, I don't know for sure. But I did hear one time that Wayne Gretzky actually at one point said, I've never seen a barbell score a goal. But if Wayne Gretzky was playing the game today with that attitude, how do you think he'd be? Not so good. So I think we still have a little bit of the old guard that are in the military that are saying, I've never seen a barbell kill a bad guy. And I think that's kind of, but we're getting there and they're starting to see that. And I think we just got to keep on pushing on. And I think we'll get to that point.
Coach. Coach Boyd.
Hey, Coach. Appreciate you taking the time with us today, first of all. So my question is, I kind of view myself in the position that I'm in right now. When you were telling your story, I kind of heard a lot of similarities, and I'm like, oh man, I'm kind of going through some of that stuff right now. So I'm with the 528 Sustainment Brigade up at Fort Bragg. A little bit about our situation, you may know. We don't have a HP coordinator. It's just a contractor, a strength coach, myself, and then we have a physical therapist. So it's a two-man team. So for me, my question is, when you were starting out and you were really kind of getting the thing going, getting buy-in, what were some of the things that you did, the techniques that you used to really get buy-in from your soldiers? And I'll throw something else in there. I don't have a hard time getting this is what's funny. I don't have a hard time getting the older guys and gals bought in, because I think the mentality around where we're at is they've been around a long time, they've done a lot of things, they've trained really hard, and then they've gone back and been like, man, if I took care of myself, for the past however many years, maybe I wouldn't feel as bad as I do right now. Maybe I wouldn't have, so much back pain or, anything like that. It's really, for me, it's more about capturing the mind of the younger soldier, because the unit in which I work, we do have a decently high population of younger soldiers. So I just kind of wanted to see what your thoughts on that would be.
Yeah, this might be slightly different, but I do. That's interesting. Is usually it's for us. It's usually older generation we have a hard time reaching. But I do think this is kind of a universal truth, is that strength conditioning. And let me tell you, I was one of the absolute worst at this. Which was the first thing I wanted to do when I met somebody I was working with, is to show them how smart I was, and then hopefully that would get their trust. Right? That was one of the biggest mistakes I ever made. And especially, and this rings true for even more in the environment we're in now, because everybody sees us by the simple fact that we're not wearing a green suit, that we're a used car salesman anyway. So that's kind of the way they look at us. So the key is that I've learned is you have to develop that trust first, and then let them know what you can do for them. And that's really a hard thing for us to wrap our heads around. But the reality is that is what it is. One of the techniques that I like to use a lot for our guys that I've used in the past is, no one questions the fact that they can work hard or are willing to work hard and drive themselves into the dirt. That's not a question. But what I do like to ask is, all right, why are you driving yourself in the dirt? Well, because I'm trying to increase endurance. Yeah, but what kind of endurance? Well, I want to be able to do this many reps for this much for this time, and No. I want to know, what is the physiological aspect that you're trying to change? And I would say it much nicer than that, but tell me what it is that you're trying to make a change on. Because if you don't understand, it's like this. When I was a kid, when I went to school, they taught me I needed to learn, or they told me I need to learn how to read, and I need to know some math skills. And what we did was, when I went to learn how to read, we did reading specific stuff because I needed to learn how to read. In other words, I wasn't learning 2 + 2 in reading class, even though both those things are important. So what I try to explain to them is that, you need to understand, it's better for you to know what it is that you're trying to do so that we can make sure that we're trying to get the outcome that you're actually wanting to get. And you need to ask yourself a few questions about what that is. And I think that, and then and of course that comes after trust. And once they get that, okay, let me hear what you have to say, then you can start introducing some of those concepts and the reasons why we're doing certain things for that. And one of the things I'll also tell you is this: strength conditioning coaches miss something. And what they miss is the reality of what we're doing is not so I can see big numbers on bench, big numbers on cleans, and big numbers on squat. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help people move better in their environment. That's it. So what is the physiological needs of the human being to help them move better in that environment? For example, if I want to teach somebody to deadlift, am I teaching them to deadlift so I can see them deadlift 500 pounds? Not really. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help them learn or get better at developing force into the ground so they can use that when they go into their environment. You see, and I think a lot of times, a lot of our people don't realize, oh, wait a minute. Okay, now I understand why I'm doing this. And I think that's the key to developing that trust. Does that help?
No, it definitely does. Just, one of the things that I'm trying to do is, again, for us, and you being where you are, that one of the things for us is utilization is the name of the game, and so trying to figure out the best way to drive proper utilization with a small staff. So being a one-man show for an entire brigade, which encompasses 3 entire battalions, that's, for me, we have a lot of soldiers that we technically are responsible for. It's trying to make sure that we are doing the best job possible to get people bought into what we're putting out there. And I think we're doing a good job of it, but, I'm really looking for more better ways to try to get out there and reach people, not just to get people in the door, but to get people training properly, because we see a lot of bad training, unfortunately.
Yeah, totally. So. Yeah, we do too. Here's what I would say, and I don't know who's going to end up watching this later on, so I hope I don't make anybody mad, but here's what I would say. I've said this to commanders before. I don't know that the civilian population, being the strength conditioning coaches, the physical therapists, and all the other people that we have, the dietitians and everybody we have available for this, I'm not sure that we can do a whole lot more to get people in the door. I just don't think we can. And what I'm getting at is there's a cultural problem. There is a cultural problem in the military, and it needs to change. And we can only do so much as people that are just still civilians, doing the best we can in order to make that cultural change. I think it's time for commanders to start standing up and saying, okay, time to make some culture changes. For example, again, I hope I don't make people, I don't care anymore. Here's the thing I would say is this, is readiness is, no one has really completely and totally told me exactly what readiness is, but yet I'm being asked to define how to show that I'm actually doing something to make somebody ready. That is, so I'm still a civilian trying to help the military be ready. So with that being said, we need to start asking commanders to get more involved in that process in order to help us get there. I don't know that, at least I don't feel I can do anything more at my group. And I've seen what a lot of other you guys are doing too. I don't know if there's any more that we can do. It's time to get a little bit more buy-in from our commanders. And so in other words, okay, I'm going to stop right there, but I think that's what I wanted to get at.
No, that's great. And I would equate it to, so fellow D2 guy here. So I relate with you on that. Played D2 football. Then the past 4 years before I got here, I was the head strength coach at a D2 school. But it's just like in athletics, your head coach sets the tone of your program. So if your head coach values you, right, and the head coach makes you a priority, then so goes the program, right? So I left a really great situation at West Alabama where I was at because I had a great head football coach that put a prime and a priority on what I did, and really let me have that part of the program and was very hands off and let me run it, and put a premium on it. It's the same way here. There's got to be a premium put on it by the command and command teams all the way down for those guys and gals to see, hey, this is what we need to be doing, and this is the way it needs to go. So I think I saw Coach Schwinn over there clapping and laughing and everything like that. So I think what you said right there resonated with a lot of us really
Yeah,
well.
let me just say this really quick too. If we decide, and by the way, some of the loose definitions have actually been, to be fair, have been actually answered. One of those is we want our people to be physically prepared, and that's physically ready. Okay, great. But that's what I'm talking about with culture change, and I can't change the battle rhythm events of the day. In other words, if my soldier needs to be at the range, improving his skill for that, and we make time for it, and it'll be nice if we can get to it. It's a matter of, no, we're going to go do that because that's helps me be ready. And if we decide that being physical is something that these guys need, then it should not be a question of, I'll get to the gym when I get a chance, or I'll do it before I go to do my normal job. No. That is your job. And therefore, you should have a time throughout the day that you go and do it because it's what you do. It's not a nice to have. It's something you do for your job, just like you do anything else. And I can't change that culture. You guys can't change that culture. And I think it's time for our commanders to do that. And by the way, to be fair, our commander at 7th Group is definitely doing that. So it's been very helpful.
No, that's awesome. And that's one thing that I've said, and I try to preach is, if you're wanting us to show this data and how many individuals are using us and progress and things like that, if all of these metrics are what need to be shown, then I can't be, for an entire brigade, I can't be boxed into a hour and a half period in the morning and about an hour and a half to 2 hour period around lunch. And then, that's it. That's all you get for about 1,000 people. There's got to be time slots throughout that entire workday for individuals to be able to come and train, because like you said it best. I mean, it's part of, it's their job. It's not a nice to have. I mean, it's crucial.
Yep. And I think when it comes to metrics too, I'm not going to do it now because I'll probably end up going on forever. And then Justin will be like, hey, whoa. Anyway, so what I would just say is that the metric piece is something else that we need to talk about and figure out, because there needs to be taken, how do I say this? Not so much focus. Okay, how do I say this? We keep talking about the physical component and the metrics on that, and are we making a difference and everything like that? But we can't necessarily get a clean, clear picture if we're only looking at physical metrics. And that's what I mean by the holistic model. And that's something that I'm super interested in, because there's the research and the science on it. You can't deny it. They are connected. And anyway, so that might come up in conversation later on, so I'll shut up for now.
Yeah, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole. Appreciate it. Thank you that was beautiful, Coach. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob.
Coach Sanders, thanks for being here, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my question is basically talking about the metrics, and since that's one of my jobs, is so how do you track, or do you track recovery? And then what would you do to one of your operators that was displaying decreased recovery or insufficient recovery?
Ooh, okay. So one of the things that I think is probably one of the most difficult things that we can do is to really track anything, because we don't, again, we have to get that culture change in order for us to actually really get our hands on people and see how people are doing. So the recovery rate is a very, very hard thing to judge, especially when we're talking about only the physical loads. I think it's pretty interesting. I've been really looking at internal loads being how are these guys doing it from a sympathetic nervous system sort of point of view, and then going into the parasympathetic where they're able to get some rest and actually do some recovery. And I don't really think I have a theory and a belief that the parasympathetic side of things is barely there. So when you're talking about recovery, we have to look at recovery internal loads, which is stressors at work, stressors with family, stressors with moral injury, stressors with PTSD, stressors with all kinds of stuff. And that's that internal piece, as opposed to just how heavy you deadlift yesterday. And I think I don't think that we can get a real good look at the recovery process unless we start looking at internal loads as heavily as we do on the external load. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Cool.
I think one thing that I see is I'm not going to go into super a lot of detail, but a lot of guys in the sympathetic state that aren't able to transition back to a parasympathetic state and recover. And kind of what we think about is like the operator's not going to last as long if they're not able to get back to that parasympathetic state and recover.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, here's what I would say. I remember years ago when I'm being with the SEAL teams, when we started testing guys and realizing that we had, asking questions about, and we found there's a lot of guys that had low testosterone. I'm like, how are these guys, some of the most, I guess, society would say some of the most manly men on the planet, have such low testosterone? Well, could it possibly be that they're just stuck sympathetically and they don't have time to rebuild? They're not allowing their bodies enough time to rebuild. So in other words, they're stuck in fight or flight all the time. And by the way, we have a whole lot of fighters we work with. We also have a lot of guys that are running. They're running from a lot of issues. They're running from a lot of stuff that they need to get taken care of. So if they're always up there in this, sympathetic drive and they're never coming back down, then it would make sense. I'm not saying that is what it is, but it's something to think about. Like, why are they not rebuilding correctly? And I think that's something that goes back to that holistic model. Again, we need to look at everything as opposed to just these these few things. I'm not sure I just answered your question. Probably not, knowing me.
You're muted.
That was great. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so I want to go to the eagle eye picture now, Coach. What motivates you? And when I say that, I want this to be kind of a multi-layered, multi-dimensional answer, so give you a little thought to it. What motivates you not only from when you started in this field to now, if it's changed, why and what? And then how do you also motivate your staff? And how's that changed over the years?
Well, the first thing I would say is that back in, I said earlier that what drives me is I want to know what a human being is capable of. I'm so curious about what that looks like. Well, back in the old days, working in collegiate athletics, I always believed in that as long as I plugged in the right physiology, the right science, and I worked harder than everybody else and worked my team harder than everybody else, and we were smarter than everyone else, we would always win. And that was always my mentality. And, I was able to be part of some really great successes in my time in collegiate athletics, stuff that I never ever saw coming, and was able to be part of those really great successes. So in my mind, I was thinking to myself, I got it. I'm right. I know what I'm doing. And as long as we plug in the right science and work harder than everybody else, we will always win. And then, of course, going to the military, I still kind of went in with that same thought pattern and always believed, once again, that I'm going to fix everything with physicality. And in the process, only got stuck in the physical side. Now, if you think about that, what I'm getting at is it wasn't, so I kind of, how do I say this? I was always focused on that piece and maybe didn't spend as much time just looking deeper into the human that was in front of me. It wasn't that I didn't care about the human in front of me. I cared about him very much. But I thought was all just worried about squatting heavy and all that, and they'll learn everything they need in life, and everything will be answered. All their issues. It's kind of like that old joke, squats cure everything. That was my belief system. So we'll be okay, and we'll just keep doing that. Well, then fast forward, going into the military, being able to see some great successes, and being part of some amazing events, and sitting back going, man, see, we're still doing it. We took that idea and we're bringing it over here in the military, and it's working great. And then, after having some really great success, we end up losing a whole troop of guys at one shot, and they didn't even get a chance to fight back. And then suddenly I felt completely powerless. It was almost like everything I thought I was, everything that I thought I believed in had been stripped away from me, and just like that. And I felt inadequate. I felt like, what, and then I started asking my questions. I started asking the questions of myself over time. There was a lot of emotions, good and bad, that went with this whole process. But one of the things I kept asking myself was, did I do everything I could for those guys? And it came back, yeah, physically speaking, I think I did everything I could for them. Then I asked myself, the question is, did I do everything I could for them spiritually and mentally? Did I take the time in my influence of coaching cleans to get deeper into these people's lives and understand their issues, to understand who they were, to get into the challenges they were having in life? Did I use that time at the best of my ability? And I did okay. I didn't do great. And so that is the motivation what's changed me, and that how I view human performance has completely changed because of that. And then you asked a question about my staff. I don't know that I've changed a whole lot as far as how I motivate them. I've always believed, and this came from George Gwozdecki, my old the hockey coach for the team I used to be a strength coach for. I just remember him saying one time, he said, listen, Mike, we hire people for a reason. And if we do a good job during the hiring process and we hire the right people, then I should be able to trust you to do your job. And I've always taken that stance. I always believe that if I bring in the right people, I should let them not run crazy and do whatever the heck they want, but allow them to be the experts they are and to do their job. And that is, to me, one of the most motivating things you can do for another human being, is to trust them. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have to listen to my rambling like I am with you guys, where I sit there and say, hey, I think we need to look at this holistic model and some of these other things and get you thinking in a different direction. But I always remember, though, there's still experts in the exercise physiology side of things, and I respect that. But I also want them to kind of think a little bit on this other side as well. But I do believe always in allowing our experts to do the best they can, and to trust them to do the best they can.
Thanks, Coach. We'll go through one more time. All the coaches, I know they all got a lot of questions for you, but we'll go one more each. And then I want you to kind of dive into your system.
Okay.
I want this platform to be there for you. I think it's important. Coach McCree.
Coach, so you were speaking about, doing everything you can, within the different realms. My question specifically is programming. I'm always one in my mind. I kind of, try to be spot on with everything that I try to do, but then also remembering the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. My question to you.
Anyway, go ahead.
My question to you is how has your programming changed from the time where you were speaking about if we do everything, we work harder, and I have the science, how has it changed over time dealing with the type of athletes that we all deal with now?
Oh boy, man, that's a tough question. I would say that really, I don't know that it's changed a whole lot as far as my thinking that I took in. I'll be honest with you, I just don't program as much as I used to, just because of all the other things we have going on. And the holistic model has actually pulled me away from being able to do as much as I would like to do. But I would say that the biggest thing that we have to always remember is that we are working with athletes that need pretty much every physiological tool available to the human body. And so with that being said, the first key is we need to find out what of all those systems that we have in place, whether it be anaerobic, and if you want to break that down to slow and fast or whatever, and then you've got your aerobic, and then speed, power, strength, all those different things. There's no real, my opinion is we don't need a certain test that everybody should be doing in order to find out what it is that they're lacking in. But we do need to look at those different physiological aspects because they are important for a soldier. And so I think how to make it a more, using the KISS principle is we look at a soldier and we just take that needs analysis to find out what it is, the things that he needs the most. And then we just program off of that. And one of the things that I like is we used to do a lot of blocks, different blocks with the SEAL teams that we used to use we used to incorporate, and we would take those blocks and just plug them in based off of where guys were at and what they needed the most and the time that they had. And that's the problem and struggle that we have working with the population that we have, is we just don't have there is no such thing as what's the word I'm looking for? They're always going to be gone. They're always going to be doing other things. There's always going to be requirements on them. So we have to do the best we can with the time that we do have with them. And I think the other thing I would say is that we also need to really look at how are ways that we can reach out to our guys when they're not with us. And so with the different, platforms and all those things that are available. So anyway, I hope that answers the question. It's a tough one, but I think the key is know what the individual is that what needs do they have, and then plug that into different types of blocks where you're trying to pull those things out of that person, and then give them that kind of programming.
Boyd?
Sorry, okay,
no,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I'm good. I was just, I missed what he said, but go ahead.
I got you. Coach Dupree, did I cut you off?
Oh no, I just telling Coach thanks. That's all.
Okay, gotcha. I didn't want to cut anybody off. So I guess for me, this is kind of a question that's directly related to my situation, but there's a lot of human performance units out there, AFSOC, USASOC, Big Army, that all have multiple components with strength and conditioning, physical therapists, athletic trainers, mental performance, all that stuff. For someone who's in kind of a very small staff but has a pretty big footprint, are there any tips or advice that you would say, coming from your position as a human performance coordinator, on how somebody like me could be the most effective? Because I know that there's going to be guys out there that are going to watch this that are, whether it's on the Big Army side or anything like that are in my situation as well. So just kind of speaking to those coaches out there that are in that small staff or limited resources stage, but still have the responsibility for caring for a lot of people. What in your mind can we do to have the widest impact?
Yeah, so you're always gonna. I think one of that's a layered question too. There's a lot.
Sorry.
That's okay. So here's what I would say is that obviously where we make our biggest impact is human to human contact. We do the best job we can. We have our hands on people. However, There's way too many people. And that's a difficult situation that we're under. I also want to say that I understand that maybe some other people at a higher level don't, is that for you to be the super good at what you do, it's not only just human to human contact. That's where you make your biggest impact, but you also need to have time to program. You need to have time to research and make yourself better, because if you make yourself better, that's how you make them better. And that goes back to that human to human contact. So one of my favorite things, actually my pastor, I heard him say one day during a sermon, he said, self-care is not selfish. Self-care is not selfish. And if I know how strength coaches are. We all want to train. We want to help people. We're all hard workers. But we also need to understand that there's a limit to what we can give out, and we have to be able to take care of ourselves as well if we're going to be able to do our absolute best for everyone. Now I'm going to go to a business sort of side of things. And I don't know where I think I stole this from Simon Sinek in his book, Start With Why. But I read a lot, so I forget where I get things. But I think that's where I got it. And he talks in there about how you always are going to have your early adopters, the ones like, yeah, man, I'm in. They have your fence riders, and they usually will they're usually going to put the fence or the early adopters later on, but they're kind of like, I don't know if I want to give myself to this. And then you've got people you're just never going to reach. What I would say is, and one of the things that we've tried to do is we try to balance it that way a little bit, whether that's right or wrong. That is kind of how we're doing it. And it's like this, when I was in collegiate athletics, hopefully none of my old athletes see this. Anyway, when I was in collegiate athletics, one of the things I used to say was that you have certain teams that just don't give you as much as other teams. And what I always used to tell everyone, I will stay one step in front of you, always. But I'm not going to stay 3 and 4 in front of you. So if your team is only going to give me this much commitment, I will stay one step in front of you and give you that much commitment. But if this team is way here in commitment, then I'm going to stay in front of them as well. And so they're going to get more time from me. They're going to get more of my attention. But I can't pull everybody along all the time. And so those are questions that maybe aren't so black and white, but are definitely guidelines that I use to kind of go, okay, how much time should I put into this person? And here's the other thing, that goes back to the trust factor. Over time, if guys start trusting you more, they're going to start giving you more. So if they're here, and when we start out and I'm here, let's do it this way, and they come a little bit closer, well, then I'm going to go this much further, and we're just going to keep on moving down the road that way. And that's how we kind of handle it. And then there's also certain individuals that, and we've done it we followed some of the guidance from some of the memos from the past from Cat 1, Cat 2, and Cat 3 soldiers. We've looked at that too. We try to service everyone, but we do it at a certain level based off of commitment. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about a minute ago.
No, thanks, Coach. That was perfect.
Cool.
Jacob?
All right. So this is a big question I always wrestle with is, how do you, when you first got to your current position, how did you build a relationship and build buy-in from your leadership?
Very badly at first. I'll be honest. I'm a recovering meathead, and usually that means you run your head through the brick wall and then we'll figure it out on the other side. I'm trying not to be like that as much anymore. One of the big thing that, and that even goes for as far as like how I've hired people over the years and knowing what I'm looking for. It goes down to, again, building that trust first. And how I kind of did it was, explaining every step of the way. Here's another thing I always say with athletes. I always used to say, hey, we're getting ready to squat. The reason why we're getting ready to squat is not because I like to see you in a lot of pain and sweat and suffering. The reason why we're getting ready to do a sprint is because I'm trying to achieve this for you. My goal is to help you get here. And I think that's how we need to embrace our commands and embrace our commanders, is to go to them and say, hey, here's the reason why I'm doing this, and be able to explain it past I'm just squatting. I'm just, yeah, we're going to clean today and throw a bunch of heavy weights around. Well, yeah, but why? What is the process, and why am I doing that? And I think that's the key, is we have to give the why behind everything we do. And that is also something I wanted to point out is the why. Simon Sinek, I love his book on Start With Why. Every one of us understand what we do. We understand how we do it. And we can explain that all day, but have we really sat back and explained why we do what we do? Because if we always pull back on the why and understand why I'm here and what I'm trying to accomplish, why I'm here, then the what's and the hows aren't necessarily as important. And so there's companies, and you guys know who they are, for example, that we are all drawn to, that are doing some really good things with Olympic, with weightlifting equipment and stuff like that. And one of the most popular ones right now, if you sit back and go, what is it about this company that seems to draw everybody to them? It's not that they have weightlifting equipment. They have a culture that people want to be a part of. And oh, by the way, they make weightlifting equipment. So I'm not trying to sell motorcycles now. Harley Davidson, when people buy a motorcycle, they're not buying a motorcycle, they're buying a lifestyle. And so what we have to do is we have to change that culture in our commands by saying, this is not something you do because it's cool, or it's something that, or whatever. This is something that's going to help you with your job. And we need to change that culture. We need to be culture makers, I guess, is what I would say.
Great. Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you for the education. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think there's another book out there. It's called about that. It's like something about tribal. They take it back all the way back to the prehistoric age and the tribal component of everything. And you want to build that tribe.
That's right.
I know Donald Miller also wrote a book about that, about your brand. And he also talks about the tribal component of it. I'm 100%. Like, if you want to sell something, or if you want to have a buy-in, you got to buy in the whole picture. You can't just buy in. I might make a damn good rack, or I might make a dang good car, but like you said, why do I want to be in that car? So
that's right. That's right. Don't sell deadlifts, man. You're never going to sell a deadlift. I used to do that too, and heck, that's how I sold myself. Was, well, I'm going to be really strong and big and cool, and it's just not the best way to get there.
Last question I want to ask you, and then I want to kind of open up that floor to you. What's your thoughts? I think this is really with us right now. We're all kind of hitting our head up against the wall, or kind of talking with other people around the industry. What's your thoughts on the return to train as the COVID-19 pandemic kind of dissipates out? How do you see that happening globally from a strength and conditions perspective, and down to your level, back to, I guess, full operation?
Oh boy. Yeah. So I'm really glad that a bunch of the other HP coordinators right before this call sent out a bunch of information on things that they were thinking about, because now I can cheat and steal and make it sound like I know what I'm doing. Here's what I would say is that's a really hard question to answer too. And how I'm kind of looking at it is I'm looping in my group surgeon, what do you call them? Our med staff. I'm speaking to our commandant as much as possible, and we're sending messages back and forth about what that looks like. There's a couple things also that I think every spot is going to have their own way of doing things. And the reason why, for example, is the weird thing that I work under is I'm actually we are an Army compound on an Air Force base. So what that commander does for Eglin might be slightly different to what my commander. I don't know for sure. I'm not speaking for them. I'm just saying that it might be a little bit different, but we all want to play well together, and we want to, do the right thing. So, I think we have to look at what the state is doing. I think we have to look at what because I think like Florida might be different than some of the other places, right? New York, I would probably say is a lot different than what Florida's going through right now, for sure. So we have to look what the state's doing. We have to look at what the society, the town, the places that we're around, the community, and what they're doing. And I also think we need to look at what the needs of of our commanders are as well. And so that's going to wrap up and look a lot different for everybody. The other thing is we also got to look at the training space. So I'm operating on a pretty large training space, so it might look different compared to some other places. One of the things that I heard one group say today, one of the HP coordinators say was that they've got this many racks, and they said one person per rack because that keeps everybody about 6 feet away. So it kind of depends. What I would say is that we need to be really slow in our process of getting back, because we've done a pretty good job of holding things together up to this point for the last month. So anything that we improve on over time is still going to be an improvement. So maybe slowly go. What we're going to do is we're going to do a phased in approach. The phase 1 approach is going to be pretty limited, but better than it is today. And we start that on Monday. And what that's going to be is we're going to allow people back into our training space. But the coaches will not necessarily be available because we don't really have anytime I put a coach in that environment, that's one less soldier that can train. So we're kind of looking at that. And then how do we start integrating people back in together? And we're going to do it really slowly, probably on a 1-to-1 basis. Will we have masks on, hazmat suits and gas masks? I don't know. But we'll see where things go. And I think the key is introduce something new. Like Jack Daniels, the running coach, used to say, introduce something, only one new thing, and see how that goes before you decide to add a whole bunch of new things. So I'd say the same thing with this is let's introduce something new, see if there's any further outbreaks. And if not, let's move into another advancement from there and just keep going until we see how things go.
No, I think that's simply put, Coach. Real quick, what was the name of that book you recommended again?
Oh gosh, I got all kinds of books for you guys. Start with Why by Simon Sinek. Start with Why by Simon Sinek.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks, Coach. All right, so last piece. I want you to kind of fill us in on what you've been working on. I think it's a crucial piece to kind of have touch points across the whole holistic model. See if you can kind of, I guess, give us a little bit of a taste of it, because I know it's probably a 2-day presentation, but the for sure.
Yeah. So here's where I'm going to get raw. I'm going to get open, and I'm just going to tell you my heart. So, and some people will get turned off by it, and some may go, okay, cool, whatever. Here's the thing is that I think we're doing a disservice to our people until we start looking at a holistic model. And in order to do that, we have to first decide what is a human being made of. Now, this is where people I see eyeballs start going kind of, whoa, okay, where's he going? Right. So what I'm about to say, I've studied pretty hard philosophically, scientifically, and I'm still doing it, and theologically, to look at this concept of the whole man and what is that. I believe the human being is made of a mind, a body, and a spirit. And I believe that they are all integrated together at a level where, they're so closely integrated with each other that the overall health or unhealth, if we could use that terminology, affects the other piece. So this goes back to my internal and external load. There's some interesting papers I've been reading here recently where they're even looking at when an injury happens in practice in athletics, did it come because of external load, which is to say, well, they turned their knee wrong this way, or they hurt their back doing deadlifts this day, or was it from internal load, which was something going on with their internal mechanisms? And a lot of stuff is pointing to that internal load as opposed to the external load. But see, we always think, well, you hurt your back because you're doing deadlifts today, so you hurt your back because you're doing deadlifts. But that may not be true. So anyway, the point, it might be something else that's been going on. And that's what I'm getting at with that holistic model. We have to integrate and come together with our chaplains. And that's hard because they don't really care about what the strength coach is doing. Our psychologists need to get integrated with the strength conditioning coaches and the dietitian and everything. We need to break down those barriers and be able to come together and reach across the hallway towards one another to help one another. So what I call this is interdependent realization. Mind, body, and spirit, each one of these are interdependent, and how the human being goes out and how they kind of operate in their environment is based on the overall model of how well each of those are clicking together. So for example, another book that I would recommend is a book called Who Switched Off My Brain by Carolyn Leaf. Carolyn Leaf says in her book, she has a citation in there that says that 87% of the people that end up going to the doctor, emergency room, whatever, came from their thought life. 87% of the people, and then 13% of the people was something from their environment. So I think we're thinking in the wrong direction. I still love strength conditioning. I still love it, but I think what we have to do is we have to get more in, bring everybody together, and breaking down those silos is really, really hard. We have issues with marriages, suicidal ideation. We have guys that are struggling. We have all these different things. And the only way that we're going to be able to make an impact is we got to bring everybody together, working together. So my challenge to strength conditioning individuals is not necessarily to be an expert in any of these other disciplines, but at least understand them enough to be able to, and believe in them enough to be able to direct people in the right direction. Because here's the thing about strength conditioning coaches, and you guys know this, you guys get trust from our individuals. When they start working with you, they start trusting you, and they trust you because you care. So again, it's coming from the fact that, man, this guy's trying to make me better. Now, here's the key. What I just say, you're telling them, they look at you as someone that is trying to help them become better in performance. So instead of saying, hey man, would you like to see the chaplain because you're messed up? That's not how we think anyway. What you say is, I think the chaplain can help you increase your performance here. But the chaplain's got to be on board with you as well, understand what that looks like. Same thing with our psychs. We have to break down those silos. And what I always used to say is, I noticed as a personal trainer, I did personal training when I was trying to go through grad school, like a lot of people did. And I remember thinking right away, why is this housewife telling me everything about her life? The reason why is I call it the bartender syndrome. It's the barber syndrome. We start working with people, they start trusting us, and then now suddenly they're telling us everything. So now let's take that information and do it in a safe way, not where we're breaking trust with people, but say, hey man, I think this other person can help you, and I'll even go with you if you want, but let's get you some help that you need. And that's how we start breaking down some of these barriers. But you also got to get your other staff on, your other assets that have anything to do with the soldier to come together as well and to work together as well.
Thanks, Coach. One other thing I wanted to do, I like to do with any of these talks, is give you the opportunity, if there's any other knowledge nuggets that you feel like we didn't ask you today, you want to kind of drop on us, please do. I think it's essential.
Yeah. So let me just say this one really quick, is that one of my things I think we need to kind of discuss is the idea of human performance and wellness. Human performance and wellness. We have to understand that wellness is something that we dip our toes into, but we're still performance specialists. That's what we're really good at. In other words, we have to be careful that we're not going too far into that wellness concept, but we do need to bring some of that wellness over into the human performance realm, because it is necessary to help our people. as I call it, we're dipping our toes in the wellness piece. And by the way, the wellness people need to dip their toes in the performance piece. Now, the key is this, is that all of us work at commands where there's one thing that the reason it exists is to send people into an environment. And what we do is we want to help them move effectively and efficiently and safely in that environment. And that environment is combat. So at the end of the day, we're still performance people. But if you look around the compound, if you look around all the compound, you're going to find that even though that spirit lives and that mentality lives on that compound, there's still other staff members, there's other facilities, and there's other things on that compound that are also more on the wellness side. But still, that piece still is to go back into combat. So here's what we do. We do a really good job of preparing people for war. We do an awful job of helping them thrive in peace. So you guys know as well as I do, Usain Bolt wins when he sets his world records, he's doing it at the Olympics because they have done that on purpose to prepare him to peak at that time. Well, what did they do right before he went to go on the biggest stage and set world records? They started downloading him. So in other words, there's that thrive in peace piece. We got side of things. We got to let them have that as well. But with that being said, there's certain facilities, as I said, and programs that are more on the peace side, and then there's some that are on the performance side. Obviously, the range is a performance side. And the mentality that the soldier takes when they're going onto the range is not the same that they have when they're thriving in peace. So what I'm getting at is every one of us were hired to prepare people for war and for combat, but we also need to dip our toes in the wellness piece, but we do not ever change our mentality of our programs or our buildings and what we do, which is to send people out the door to go do their jobs at a high level. And that's what I mean by that performance and wellness piece. And if we start talking about bringing down some of the bigger issues, and I think they're important, which is families are struggling. We have suicide ideation. We have all those things happening. I think I can make an argument for that by separating, but dipping our toes back and forth, but still separating is important to keep some of those things down, if that makes sense. Okay, that's it.
No, I appreciate it, and I think we tend to get too silo based in our understanding of training, and in that we don't. I mean, what you've said this whole hour is we don't focus on the whole person. And I think
Right.
I think in that whole presence is where you hit these stop gaps and you think to yourself, well, how can I make these guys better? They're squatting, they're deadlifting, they're sprinting, they're jumping, but they're not getting better. And Jacob said it beautifully. He's like, I got these guys, like literally, they're sympathetic. How do I get back that parasympathetic? Look at the big picture.
Yes.
And I think kind of starts, gets it, but they, just like you said, they don't get it. They don't want to fully invest in it, because they do, that means a complete change. And I love the capability and the movement that you're pushing for, because I think that's it, in my opinion.
Yeah, so let me just say this really quick. And I know that this is not, I already know all the arguments against this, so we don't need to argue about this, and I know what other people would think when they hear this, but what if we could take a good old-fashioned periodized model? All right, now I understand the limitations of that and where we work, but if we could change a culture, maybe we wouldn't have that problem anymore. If we could take a periodization model, which is to say that we have foundational strength conditioning, then we have more preseason, specific training, and then we have in-season training where we're maintaining and taking care of people. We understand how that works, but what if we could do that with our chaplains as well? What if we could do it with our behavioral health psychs? What if we could come on board and everybody's working together, understanding each other, not completely all the deep details, but at least understanding. And now we're all looking at the operational cycle and working together. Now suddenly we're attacking ethics, which they have kind of, instead of having the team drive the ethics, you're having actual ethics being reintroduced and worked on over time. Like I ask all the time to our guys, have you ever heard of moral injury? No, I've never heard of that before. I'm talking about the soldiers. Well, that's a problem. Has anybody even talked to you about what that even means and what that looks like? Because it's like this. My kids, it's like this, and I'm not, my kids are in a culture that I can't stop. They're in a culture that is happening around them, and they're in that culture. I can't be with them all the time. I can't say, nope, don't do that. Put that down. I can't do that. So what I have to do is I have to introduce to them what the culture looks like and what I think the right way to go is, and then instill those values in them and that understanding so that they can make those decisions better in the heat of the moment. They can know, oh, wait a minute, I know what I'm supposed to do here. I understand what my value is. I'm not going to go that way. And I think that's what we need to do is we need to start bringing everybody together, our psychs and everyone. We have to break down the stigmas that are associated with that. And how you break down the stigma, it's not about there's something wrong with you, but rather there's something right with you. And I just want to make you better than you were before, spiritually, mentally, physically. And then we start working together with those other professionals in a systemized approach that we've all been doing in athletics on the physiological side for years, but doing it in that approach. Now, again, I know what people are thinking right now. Well, you can't do that because I can't get anybody consistently in my place. I know, that's what I'm saying. The civilians have done everything they can. We know what the answers could possibly look like, but until we get our hands on people, we're not going to be able to really make that change. So that goes back to changing the culture. Commanders are awesome, and they have the opportunity to change culture. And so that's what I'm getting at. Let's go that direction so that we can start bringing, and my belief is then suddenly you will start seeing some of these changes happen that are going in the right direction as opposed to in the wrong direction. We have too many people that think they're on their own and they just have to suck it up and know, the only easy day was yesterday, all that stupid crap that these guys like to say, that's not reality. And we need to start taking care of them better that way.
No, I love it. I do. And I thank you for that. I think the last piece I'll kind of interject into it. I'm in my last year and a half coaching. I really got into Brene Brown, and I love her, and just empathy and shame and the community aspect of everything. She talks about, like, I think that's, in my opinion, I think she's pretty much what you say, and what you say is what she says. I think she's a rock star, and I think if you really listen to her and you follow her, she gets that. And I think, that's why SOCOM has brought her to talk to folks multiple times. And I think the buy-ins, not just that, it doesn't just need to be smoke anymore. The fire needs to start happening. And I appreciate guys like you, Coach, that are pushing and spearheading that, because I think the only way it's going to happen if there's someone that's as passionate as you to push that. And eventually, the breakthrough will happen. I know that. I believe that, because more and more people will get on the ship. And I'm on the boat. I am, Coach. I promise you that. So best I can tell you is I want to honor your time. And I would say that, like, this has been awesome. And I know everybody else will reiterate that. You've been a huge resource to us. And I thank you for that professional relationship we have. I know I can reach out to you. I know you're willing to tell me the truth, not the political answer, because I think that's how we see growth. That's how this becomes organic, is not be scared that, oh, if I don't push for this, if I push too hard, people are going to bite back. Well, for innovation to happen, you got to be able to accept failure here and there. You have to.
You got to fall on your face and then get back up and go again. If you're not willing to do that, listen, if you don't fail every once in a while, you're not trying hard enough.
I agree. So I just want to thank you again, Coach. Best of luck, and we'll be in contact. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks. If you guys need anything, let me know, and keep doing your good stuff, man. It's good to see all you meatheads doing great things.
Thanks, Coach.